A Werewolf Shifter Romance, written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. Whispers Behind Tapestries. The rain began as a whisper against the stone walls of Iron Peak Fortress, growing into a relentless drumming that matched the frantic beating of Wren Thornley's heart. At 22, she should have been preparing for her wedding with joy, not returning early from the village with an inexplicable dread coiling in her stomach. The borrowed cart had lost a wheel, cutting her errands short, and now the corridor stretched before her in shadowed silence. Her boots made soft sounds against worn flagstones as she approached the great hall. Voices drifted from the meeting room beyond, low and conspiratorial. Wren slowed, recognizing Tobias immediately. Her betrothed. The man she would marry in 2 weeks. The father of the child growing in her belly. Barely 2 months along, but already changing everything about her future. She should have announced herself. Should have continued walking. But something in his tone made her pause behind the ancient tapestry depicting wolves running beneath a full moon. The fabric smelled of dust and centuries, and through its weave, she could just make out 2 figures. Tobias stood with a Delta named Willem, a man known for his ambition and cruel eyes. They bent over parchment spread across the oak table, speaking in hushed urgency. "The timing must be perfect," Tobias said, his voice carrying none of the warmth he showed her. "Gregor has agreed. Once the brat is born, I arrange an accident. New mothers are often careless on the battlements, especially after sunset. A tragic fall. The pack will mourn her." Wren's hand flew to her mouth, stifling the gasp that threatened to escape. Surely she had misheard. Surely he was discussing some other matter, some hypothetical scenario. Willem's response destroyed that desperate hope. "And the beta? Rowan Thornley has served Iron Peak for 25 years. The pack respects him, which is why rogues will kill him during the investigation of his daughter's death." Tobias's smile was audible even through the tapestry. "Gregor will witness the attack himself. Who would question the alpha? As widower with an heir carrying beta blood, with Gregor's endorsement, the Alpha King won't deny my appointment. The position I should have had by birth, if my father hadn't been weak Omega filth." Wren's legs trembled. The child in her womb seemed to pulse with her racing heartbeat. This couldn't be real. The man who had courted her for 6 months, who had kissed her so tenderly, who had seemed so pleased when she told him about the pregnancy. "You're certain you can maintain the deception?" Willem asked. "Fathering a child proves virility. But some may still question your right to lead. No one will question the child is mine. Once the brat is born, I arrange an accident. New mothers are often careless on the battlements." Tobias's laugh was cold. "Everyone will believe the brat is mine. I'll take other women later, claim them barren when no children come. Perhaps adopt orphans to strengthen my claim. All that matters is power, Willem. Finally being more than my father ever was. Finally making them all see me as alpha blood deserves to be seen. All that matters is power, Willem. Finally being more than my father ever was. Finally making them all see me as alpha blood deserves to be seen." The tapestry swam before Wren's eyes. Every moment of their courtship replayed in her mind with sickening clarity. The careful attention, the strategic proposal before her father, Tobias's too perfect enthusiasm about becoming a father. All lies. Every single moment had been calculated manipulation toward this end. Her murder and her father's death. She had to move, had to run. But her body refused to obey, frozen in horror as the 2 men continued discussing her death as casually as one might discuss the weather. Then Willem mentioned checking the guard rotations, and their footsteps approached the door. Wren finally moved, stumbling backward down the corridor on silent feet. Her mind screamed a single word: escape. She couldn't think beyond that. Couldn't process the enormity of the betrayal. The man she thought she loved planned to murder her, to steal her child, to destroy her father. The great doors of Iron Peak loomed ahead. She pushed through them into the storm, welcoming the cold rain that immediately soaked through her wool dress. The stable was to the left, but she veered right instead toward the forest. The forbidden forest that marked the boundary between pack territory and the wild lands where rogues were said to roam. Her father's warnings echoed in her mind. Rowan had forbidden her from venturing there since childhood. Rogues were dangerous, he said. Savage. They killed without mercy. But what mercy would she find in Iron Peak now? What safety in the stone walls where her betrothed plotted her death? Thunder cracked overhead as Wren plunged into the tree line. Branches tore at her dress, at her skin. She welcomed the pain. It was real, grounding, proof she wasn't trapped in some nightmare. The ground turned treacherous underfoot, mud sucking at her boots until she kicked them off, running barefoot through the undergrowth. She had no direction, no plan, just blind panic driving her deeper into the woods as rain turned the world into gray chaos. Thorns ripped at her dress, and she felt the warmth of blood mixing with cold rain on her feet, her hands, anywhere the forest could reach her. Her wolf, that weak presence that had never fully manifested, stirred uselessly inside her. Since childhood, she'd been told she was barely shifter at all, too weak to transform, too human, a disappointment to their bloodline. Now, when she desperately needed that animal strength, it couldn't help her. The panic attack hit without warning. Wren's chest constricted, breath coming in short, sharp gasps that couldn't seem to reach her lungs. The forest tilted sideways. She stumbled, fell, her hands plunging into icy mud beside a rushing stream swollen with rainwater. She tried to stand, managed 2 steps before her legs gave out completely. The last thing Wren saw before darkness claimed her was the churning gray sky through gaps in the canopy, and her last coherent thought was a desperate prayer that whatever found her in these woods would be kinder than what awaited her in Iron Peak. Somewhere in the distance a wolf howled. Then nothing. Fennec Wolfsbane had been tracking the deer for an hour, moving through his territory with the easy confidence of a predator who knew every tree, every stream, every hiding place the forest offered. At 31, he'd lived as a rogue for 8 years, and these woods had become more home than the castle where he'd once served as an honored warrior. The Rogue King, they called him now. The title amused him. As if rogues needed kings. They needed safety, purpose, a place where the rejected and abandoned could find dignity again. The deer's trail led him east, toward the boundary with Iron Peak territory. He rarely ventured this close to pack lands. The alpha there, Gregor Ironheart, had made his hatred of rogues abundantly clear. But prey didn't respect borders, and Fennec's people needed food. The scent hit him before he saw anything. Blood. Female. And underneath it, something else. Something that made his wolf surge forward inside him with sudden, desperate urgency. Panic. Pure, absolute terror. Fennec abandoned the deer trail and ran, his shifter speed carrying him through the forest in great leaping strides. The rain made tracking harder, but that scent pulled him like a rope around his chest, drawing him unerringly forward. He found her collapsed beside the stream, her body pale and still in the gray afternoon light. The dress marked her as Iron Peak Pack, fine wool now torn and muddy, dark hair spread across the ground like spilled ink. Her feet were cut and bleeding, hands scraped raw, and she was pregnant. Fennec could smell it clearly now that he was close. 2 months, perhaps. Young enough that it wouldn't show beneath her clothes, but obvious to shift her senses. What was a pregnant pack female doing alone in the forest, dressed for the fortress but barefoot and bleeding? Fennec knelt beside her, checking her pulse. Strong and steady, though her breathing was shallow. She'd fainted from shock or exhaustion, or both. He could wake her, but the terror still clinging to her scent suggested that might not be wise. Better to get her to safety first. Let Mara examine her, as he gathered her into his arms. His wolf did something it had never done before. It recognized her, not as prey, not as threat, not even as one of his people who needed protection. It recognized her as mate. The realization nearly made him drop her. Fennec stared down at the unconscious woman in his arms. This stranger from Iron Peak Pack who shouldn't mean anything to him. But the mate bond had awakened, singing through his blood with absolute certainty. This woman, whoever she was, belonged to him in the most fundamental way their kind understood, and she was pregnant with another male's child. The rain continued falling as Fennec stood frozen in indecision. He should leave her. Let her pack find her. A beta's daughter, by the quality of her dress, which meant complications he couldn't afford. His people needed him focused, not distracted by impossible bonds. but her scent of terror hadn't faded. Whatever had driven her into the forest still frightened her, even unconscious. And he could smell blood that wasn't from her cuts, traces of violence in the fabric of her dress. She was running from something, or someone. Fennec made his decision. He adjusted his grip, cradling her against his chest, and began the journey back to his camp. Whatever had happened, whoever she was, his wolf had claimed her as mate. That meant she was his to protect now. Consequences be damned. The Rogue King carried his unexpected prize deeper into the forest, toward the hidden settlement where 47 outcasts had built a new home, toward safety, shelter, and the complicated future that had just dropped unconscious into his arms during a storm. Chapter 2: Awakening Among Wolves. Consciousness returned slowly, dragging Ren from darkness into awareness of warmth and unfamiliar scents. Smoke from a wood fire, dried herbs hanging somewhere overhead, clean linen beneath her cheek. Nothing that belonged to the cold rain and mud where she'd collapsed. Her eyes opened to rough wooden walls, and a low ceiling crossed with dark beams. Sunlight filtered through gaps in the shutters, creating patterns of gold across worn floorboards. The cabin was small but meticulously clean, with bundles of plants tied along one wall and clay jars lined neatly on shelves. A woman sat beside the narrow bed where Ren lay, grinding something in a mortar with steady, rhythmic movements. She was perhaps 35, with wild auburn curls pulled back in a messy knot and warm brown eyes that lifted to meet Ren's gaze. "You're awake," the woman said, her voice gentle. "Good. You've been unconscious for hours." Ren tried to sit up, but her body protested with a dozen aches. Her feet throbbed. Her hands stung where thorns had torn skin. The woman's hand pressed firmly against her shoulder, keeping her down. "Easy. You've had quite a shock to your system. I'm Mara. I've been tending your wounds." The words penetrated slowly. Then Ren registered what else she was seeing. The woman's dress was simple homespun, not pack finery. The cabin had no pack markers, no family crests. And through the window, she could see other small structures scattered among trees, connected by rope bridges and wooden platforms. This wasn't Iron Peak territory. "Where am I?" Ren's voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. "Somewhere safe." Mara returned to her grinding. "Though I imagine that's not what you were taught about us." Us. The word landed with terrible certainty. Ren's heart began racing again, that same panic from the forest threatening to resurface. All her life, her father had warned her. Rogues were dangerous, savage. They killed without mercy or reason. She tried to stand this time, ignoring Mara's protest. Her legs held, barely, as she backed toward the door. Every instinct screamed to run, even though running had brought her here in the first place. "I need to leave. Please, I'll just go. I won't tell anyone about this place. You're pregnant and barely healed from exhaustion. Where exactly do you plan to go?" The door opened before Ren could answer, and she froze. The man who entered seemed to fill the entire cabin with his presence. He was tall, powerfully built, with black hair falling past his shoulders, and eyes the color of amber in firelight. Scars marked his forearms, and one traced from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, radiating authority so absolute it pressed against Ren's senses. An alpha. She knew it instinctively, even before her weak shifter blood responded with involuntary submission. His gaze found her immediately, those strange eyes narrowing as he took in her defensive posture against the wall. Something flickered across his expression, too fast to read, before his features settled into careful neutrality. "You're from Iron Peak Pack." It wasn't a question. His voice was deep, resonant, carrying command in every syllable. "The dress is expensive. Beta family, I'd guess." Ren pressed harder against the wall, wishing it would open and swallow her. This man could probably kill her with one hand. Instead, he moved further into the cabin, deliberately slow, as if approaching a cornered animal. "My name is Fennec Wolfsbane. These are my lands, such as they are." Why was a beta's daughter running through the forest alone, pregnant and terrified? The question hung between them. Ren's mind raced. What could she say? That her betrothed planned to murder her? That her father's life was in danger? If these rogues knew her value, they could use her against Iron Peak. Ransom, hostage, leverage in whatever conflict existed between Pax and the rejected. I can't tell you that. Her voice shook despite her best efforts. Fennec's expression didn't change, but she felt his attention intensify, examining her with unsettling focus. He stepped closer, and Ren's back hit the wall with nowhere left to retreat. Can't or won't. Does it matter? It does if I'm to decide whether you're a danger to my people. I'm not dangerous to anyone. The words came out bitter. She was barely dangerous to herself, apparently. Weak blood. Weak wolf. Weak enough that the man she'd loved had decided she was disposable. Fennec tilted his head slightly, considering. His scent wrapped around her. Something wild and woodsy that made her pulse quicken, for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. Heat crept up her neck as she realized how close he stood, how his presence seemed to dominate all her senses. Then why run? His voice had dropped lower. Why flee Iron Peak alone, in a storm, bleeding and barefoot? Ren's composure cracked. Exhaustion, terror, betrayal, all of it crashed over her again. Tears burned behind her eyes as Tobias's cold voice echoed in her memory. A tragic fall. The pack will mourn her. He wants me dead, she whispered. The admission tore out of her before she could stop it. The father of my child. He plans to kill me. Silence fell heavy in the cabin. Mara's grinding had stopped. Fennec's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his skin. Then he's a fool. The words came out rough, almost angry. Any male who would harm his pregnant mate deserves death himself. Something about his fury on her behalf made Ren's throat tighten further. She blinked rapidly, fighting the tears that wanted to fall. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of these strangers, no matter how unexpected their compassion. I can offer you protection, Fennec continued after a moment. Shelter, food, safety. But I need something in return. There it was. The price. Ren had known it would come. Nothing was free, especially not from rogues who lived outside pack law. What do you want? Information. Iron Peak's defenses, guard rotations, weak points in the fortress walls. Ren stared at him. He wanted her to betray her pack. Her father was Beta there. Her entire family lived within those walls. Giving tactical information to rogues was treason of the highest order. But what loyalty did she owe a pack where her betrothed plotted her murder, where Alpha Gregor had apparently agreed to the scheme? She opened her mouth, closed it again. Her thoughts tangled, unable to find solid ground. Fennec watched her internal struggle with something that might have been understanding in his amber eyes. Before either could speak again, Mara stood, drawing their attention. She needs rest before any decisions are made, and I need to examine her properly, Alpha, if you'll give us privacy. It wasn't really a request despite the polite phrasing. Fennec's gaze held Ren's for another long moment, and she felt that strange pull again, like invisible threads trying to connect them. Then he nodded and left, the cabin feeling suddenly empty without his overwhelming presence. Mara gestured Ren back to the bed. Let me check your wounds and the child. Then we can talk. Ren sat slowly, her mind still reeling. The healer's hands were gentle as she examined cuts and bruises, applying salves that smelled of comfrey and calendula. When those calloused fingers pressed carefully against Ren's abdomen, she tensed. 2 months? Mara asked. Ren nodded mutely. The baby is healthy. Mara paused, frowning slightly. The baby is strong. Healthy. You'll need rest. But there's nothing unusual for this stage. The observation made Ren flinch. She'd been so focused on Tobias's planned betrayal that she hadn't processed everything he'd said. Every smile when she told him of the child. Every tender word. All lies. He saw their baby only as a weapon for power. Mara was watching her with knowing eyes. You hesitate when I mention the father. Ren's hands twisted in the blanket. How could she explain? The man she'd believed loved her had revealed himself a monster. But part of her, some desperate, foolish part, still wanted to believe she'd misunderstood. That the conversation behind the tapestry had been some terrible nightmare. I heard him, she said finally, her voice breaking. Planning my death, but it doesn't seem real. Like I might have dreamed it, or heard wrong, or... She trailed off, knowing how pathetic she sounded. You want to believe the best of him. Mara's tone held sympathy, not judgment. That's natural when you've loved someone. The heart doesn't accept betrayal easily. Ren looked away, blinking hard. Does it matter what I want to believe? He said what he said. I heard it clearly. Then you know the truth, even if accepting it hurts. Silence settled between them for a moment. Through the window, Ren could see people moving through the settlement. Rogues, she reminded herself. The dangerous outcasts she'd been taught to fear. Yet Mara's hands had been gentle. Fennec's anger had been on Ren's behalf, not directed at her. Why does your alpha want information about Iron Peak? Ren asked quietly. Is he planning an attack? Mara's expression shifted, becoming carefully neutral. That's not my story to tell. But Fennec has his reasons, and they're not what you'd expect. Before Ren could press further, the door opened again. Fennec stood in the threshold, and something in his posture suggested he'd been nearby the entire time, listening or simply unable to move far. His eyes found hers across the cabin, and Ren felt that pull again, stronger now. Some instinct she couldn't name urged her toward him, even as logic screamed warnings. You can stay, he said finally, until you're healed, until you decide what to do next. No one here will harm you. It wasn't the answer she'd expected. Ren studied his face, searching for deception, but found only that strange intensity that seemed focused entirely on her. Why would you help me? Fennec's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, so quietly she almost missed it. Because you need help. And I've never been able to walk away from that. He left before she could respond. Ren stared at the empty doorway, her heart racing for reasons she couldn't explain. Behind her, she heard Mara sigh softly. Is he... Ren hesitated, not sure what she wanted to ask. The mate you've been waiting for? Mara finished. That's between you and him to discover. Ren turned to stare at the healer, but Mara was already moving toward the door, leaving her alone with more questions than answers and the lingering scent of wood smoke and wild things that made her pulse race despite everything that had happened. Outside, the settlement stirred with life, and Ren wondered what she'd stumbled into when she'd fled Iron Peak's walls for the dangerous freedom of the forest. Chapter 3. Between Shadow and Shelter. 2 weeks passed in a rhythm Ren had never known existed. She woke with dawn light filtering through wooden shutters, the scent of pine smoke and morning dew replacing the cold stone smell of Iron Peak Fortress. The cabin Mara had given her was small, but warm, tucked among the trees with a view of the settlement below. 47 rogues called this place home, Ren learned. 47 outcasts who had built something remarkable from rejection. The settlement sprawled through the forest in careful arrangement. Wooden cabins dotted the ground level, while platforms connected by rope bridges held smaller dwellings high in the ancient oaks. A central clearing served for communal meals and gatherings. Everything was meticulously maintained despite the rough materials, speaking to pride in what they'd created. Ren watched them from her window that first week, too uncertain to venture far. They moved through daily tasks with surprising organization. Hunting parties left at dawn. Others tended small gardens carved from the forest floor. Children, actual children, played freely without the rigid hierarchy she'd grown up under. No one seemed to care about rank here. An older woman who'd been Omega in her original pack now taught the young ones to read. A former warrior with a twisted leg kept the forge running. They rotated responsibilities, everyone contributing according to their abilities rather than their blood. It unsettled everything Ren had been taught about how packs functioned. Mara found her on the third day, appearing at the cabin door with a basket of herbs. You'll go mad if you stay cooped up. Come help me. Ren hesitated. I don't know anything about healing. Then you'll learn. Better than dwelling on what you've lost. The healer's workspace occupied a larger cabin near the center of the settlement. Bundles of plants hung from every beam, filling the air with complex scents. Clay pots lined shelves, each labeled in neat script. A workbench held mortars, blades, and tools Ren couldn't name. Mara set her to grinding dried leaves while explaining their properties. Willow bark for pain, yarrow for bleeding, comfrey for bones. The work was repetitive, soothing, giving Wren's hands something to do while her mind processed everything that had happened. "You have good instincts," Mara observed after a few days. "You knew to add water slowly to that poultice without being told." "I just thought it looked too dry." "Exactly. Instinct." Mara smiled. "You'd make a fine healer with training." The compliment warmed something in Wren's chest. No one in Iron Peak had ever suggested she might be good at anything beyond producing heirs and managing a household. It was during one of these sessions that a young man appeared in the doorway, all easy grins and familiar features. He had Fennec's strong jaw and dark hair, though his fell only to his shoulders, and his face bore no scars. His eyes were the same amber, but lighter, more gold than bronze. "Mara, do you have something for—" He stopped when he saw Wren, surprise crossing his features. "Oh, you're the Iron Peak girl. Wren," she corrected quietly. "Oryx." He stepped inside, moving with the same predatory grace as his brother but with none of the intensity. "Fennec told us to leave you be, but I'm terrible at following orders." "Oryx." Mara's voice held warning. "What?" "I'm just being friendly." He leaned against the workbench, studying Wren with open curiosity. "So it's true then? You're pregnant and your mate wants you dead?" "That's cold, even for Iron Peak." "He's not my mate." The words came out sharper than intended. Oryx's eyebrows rose. "The baby's father isn't your mate. That's unusual." Wren's hand stilled on the mortar. She hadn't thought about it in those terms. Mate bonds were sacred among shifters, chosen by the moon goddess herself. She'd assumed Tobias was hers because they'd been together, because she'd loved him. But there had never been that pull she'd heard described, that certainty of belonging. Nothing like the strange awareness she felt whenever Fennec was near. "Leave her alone," Mara said, but not unkindly. "You came for burn salve?" Idiot tried to show off with fire spinning. Predictable results. Oryx accepted the jar Mara handed him, but his attention stayed on Wren. "You know, Fennec was a warrior in the Alpha King's personal guard before they accused him of murder." Wren's head snapped up. "What?" "Oryx," Mara warned again, more forcefully. "She should know. Everyone else here does." He settled more comfortably against the bench, clearly settling in for storytelling. 8 years ago, there was a child, son of an alpha who served the king's court. Boy was 7, healthy, well-loved. Then one night he died. Poison, they said. And who was assigned to guard the family wing that week? Fennec. Wren's chest tightened. "Did he kill a child?" Oryx's expression hardened. "My brother may be many things, but he's not a murderer. Someone poisoned that boy. But it wasn't Fennec. He was blamed because he discovered something he wasn't supposed to. When he tried to report it, suddenly he was the accused. The Alpha King exiled him without trial, too consumed by grief to think clearly. That's horrible. That's pack politics." Oryx shrugged, but bitterness edged his voice. "I followed him into exile. Couldn't let my older brother face the wilderness alone. We were the first, but others came. Omegas who'd been abused, shifters who'd challenged corrupt alphas, anyone the packs decided was disposable. Fennec gave them purpose again, safety, dignity." Wren processed this, her understanding of rogues continuing to fracture. "The way I was taught, rogues are dangerous, violent. Some are. Those who were banished for real crimes, or who went feral from isolation. But most?" Oryx gestured broadly. "Most are just people who didn't fit someone else's idea of how a pack should work." Before Wren could respond, shouts erupted from outside. Oryx was moving before the sound fully registered, his casual demeanor vanishing into deadly focus. Mara grabbed a knife from her workbench, and Wren followed them both into the twilight. The settlement had transformed into controlled chaos. Women hurried children toward the larger cabins while men grabbed weapons. Near the eastern edge, figures moved between trees. Too many. Too aggressive. "Bandits," Oryx snarled. "They've been raiding settlements west of here. Must have gotten bold." Wren's breath caught as she saw them clearly. These weren't Fennec's rogues. These were the dangerous ones her father had warned about. Wild-eyed, scarred, moving with violence rather than grace. One grabbed Mara, dragging her toward the tree line. Wren didn't think. Her hand found a burning branch from the nearest fire pit. The heat seared her palm, but she ignored it, swinging the makeshift weapon at the rogue's head. He dropped with a howl, releasing Mara to clutch his burned face. Then Fennec was there, materializing from the shadows with lethal purpose. He moved through the attackers with brutal efficiency. No wasted motion, just pure, devastating violence. 2 went down under his assault, throats torn, before the others scattered back into the forest. The entire attack had lasted perhaps 3 minutes. Fennec stood in the clearing, chest heaving, blood on his hands and clothes. His eyes found Wren immediately, sweeping over her with something almost frantic before settling on the burned hand still clutching the branch. He crossed to her in 3 strides. "You're hurt." "I'm fine. Mara is fine because of you." His fingers closed around her wrist, gently prying the branch from her grip. "You saved her." Wren stared at him, at the concern etched in every line of his face. Around them, the settlement slowly returned to normal. The attackers were gone or dead. Everyone was safe, but Fennec looked at her like she'd been the one in danger. "Why?" The question tore from her throat. "Why do you care what happens to me? Why risk your people fighting them off when you could have just let them take what they wanted?" Fennec's jaw tightened. His thumb brushed across her wrist, over the pulse point that hammered too fast. When he spoke, his voice was low enough that only she could hear. "Because you're my mate. I knew it the moment I found you in the forest. Your scent, your presence. Everything about you calls to my wolf." His amber eyes held hers with painful intensity. "But you're pregnant with another male's child. You're running from trauma I can't fix. I won't force a bond you don't want, Wren. I won't be another male who takes your choices away. But I also can't stop protecting you. It's not something I can control." The world seemed to narrow to just the 2 of them. Wren felt that pull again, stronger now, like invisible threads trying to weave between their hearts. Her wolf, that weak presence that had never manifested properly, stirred with unprecedented clarity. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Neither do I." A hint of frustration colored his tone. Mate bonds don't usually ignore existing pregnancies, but ours doesn't seem to care. Someone cleared their throat nearby. Mara stood watching them with knowing eyes. "Your hand needs treatment." Fennec released Wren's wrist slowly, reluctantly. "Go. We'll talk later." He walked away before she could respond, barking orders to check the perimeter and count their people. Wren let Mara lead her back to the healing cabin, her mind spinning. 3 days later, a rider approached under flag of truce. He dismounted cautiously, clearly nervous to be in rogue territory. His message was brief and devastating. Tobias had accused Wren of fleeing with a rogue lover. Her father Rowan was imprisoned, being tortured for information about her location. Alpha Gregor had given an ultimatum. Wren had 1 month to return and face judgment, or Rowan would be executed as punishment for raising a traitor daughter. Wren listened to the message with ice spreading through her veins. Of course, Tobias would find a way to hurt her even after she'd escaped. Of course, her father would pay the price for her survival. After the messenger left, Mara found her staring into the forest. The healer's expression was grim. "I need to tell you something," Mara said, "about why I know things that other rogues don't. Why I could read the messenger's credentials." "What do you mean?" "I'm Fennec's older sister. I was banished 10 years ago for refusing a mate bond my alpha tried to force. Fennec defended my choice, which started questioning his loyalty. When he was later accused of murder, many believed his defense of me proved he didn't respect pack law." Mara's eyes held old pain. "But I've spent these years building something useful. I have contacts in multiple packs. People who sympathize with our cause but are too afraid to join us openly. They send information. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I have a contact close to the Alpha King himself. I can send a message, reveal suspicions about Gregor and Tobias's conspiracy. It will take time to reach the capital and for the king to act, but it's your best chance at justice." Mara gripped Wren's shoulders. "Your father needs more than rescue. He needs the truth exposed." That night, under cover of darkness, a rider left the settlement carrying Mara's carefully worded letter. Wren watched him go, praying the message would reach the Alpha King before time ran out. Beside her, Fennec's presence radiated warmth in the cool night air. He didn't touch her, but she felt him as clearly as if they were connected. "We'll save your father," he said quietly. "Whatever it takes." Ren believed him, and that terrified her almost as much as everything else. Chapter 4. Flame and steel maps spread across Fennec's table, weighted at corners with smooth river stones. Candlelight flickered over hand-drawn lines marking guard towers, patrol routes, and the weak point in Iron Peak's eastern wall where drainage met stone. Ren traced the path with her finger, committing details to memory. They change the watch at midnight and again at dawn. The gap between rotations is only minutes, but it's enough if you're fast. And the dungeon access? Fennec leaned closer, his shoulder brushing hers. The contact sent heat racing through her veins, distracting and unwelcome. "Here." She pointed to a secondary entrance used for supply deliveries. "It's guarded, but only by 2. The main security focuses on the fortress entrance." They'd been planning for 3 days now, every evening after Ren finished helping Mara. The work gave her purpose beyond dwelling on her father's imprisonment, but it also meant hours in close quarters with Fennec. Hours where she became increasingly aware of every breath he took, every small movement, the way his amber eyes tracked her with unnerving focus. "You know these defenses well," he observed. "Your father trained you. He trained me in everything. Strategy, combat, pack politics." Ren's throat tightened. He wanted me ready to support whatever mate I eventually found, to be an asset to my future pack. "You are an asset, just not in the way he expected." Fennec's hand covered hers on the map. "You have tactical mind, Ren. That's rare. She should pull away." The mate bond between them was undeniable now, humming beneath her skin whenever he was near. But she carried another man's child. A man who'd wanted her dead. Nothing about this situation made sense. "Tell me something," she said quietly. "The child you were accused of killing." "What really happened?" Fennec's expression shuddered. He withdrew his hand, standing to stare out the window at the darkening forest. For a long moment, Ren thought he wouldn't answer. His name was Corvin. 7 years old, bright as summer sun, loved climbing trees despite his mother's protests. The words came slowly, heavy with old grief. "I was assigned to guard the family wing that week. Standard rotation for the Alpha King's warriors. The morning I found him, he was already cold. Poison, they determined later. Something slipped into his evening milk. Who did it? Another guard. Man named Theron. Someone I'd trained with for years. He'd been paid by Alpha Gregor and his conspirators. They wanted to destabilize the king's alliance with Corvin's father, weaken both families." Fennec's hands fisted at his sides. "I discovered evidence. Letters, payment records. When I tried to report it, Theron claimed I was deflecting blame. Gregor supported his story. The king was mad with grief, needed someone to punish. I was convenient. That's monstrous. That's pack politics." He turned to face her, pain raw in his amber eyes. 8 years, Ren. 8 years I've carried the weight of that boy's death, knowing I failed to protect him, knowing the real killer walks free while I'm exiled. Ren crossed to him without thinking, her hand finding his arm. "It wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? I should have seen the threat. Should have questioned why Theron volunteered for extra shifts that week. You can't blame yourself for another's evil." His hand covered hers, thumb stroking across her knuckles. "You defend me easily. Why? Because I know what it's like to be blamed for things beyond your control." Her voice dropped. "To be called weak, disposable, barely worth the air you breathe." Fennec's other hand came up to cup her face, tilting her chin until their eyes met. "You are none of those things. You're brilliant, courageous, stronger than you know. I've never even shifted properly. Because your wolf is waiting for something. Someone." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "She's waiting for you to feel safe enough to let her emerge." The air between them thickened with tension. Ren's heart hammered against her ribs as Fennec leaned closer, his breath warm against her skin. She should step back, should remember the child growing inside her, the complications that would never disappear. Instead, she swayed forward. The door crashed open, Oryx stood in the threshold, chest heaving. "Fennec, we need you. Now." They found the problem at the training ground, where a young rogue named Petra sat clutching a twisted ankle. Fennec examined it with careful efficiency, while Ren watched, fascinated by this gentler side of the alpha. "Sprained, not broken. Mara can wrap it." He helped Petra to her feet, supporting her weight. "No training for a week, but the attack will happen with or without you at full strength. Heal first." His tone brooked no argument. After Petra limped away with Oryx's assistance, Fennec turned to Ren. "You should learn basic defense. If something goes wrong during the rescue, you need to protect yourself. I'm pregnant. Which makes you a target. All the more reason to know how to fight back." He retrieved wooden practice daggers from a rack. Nothing strenuous, just enough to give you options. The lesson began simply. Stance, balance, how to hold the blade for maximum leverage. Fennec moved behind her, adjusting her grip, his body warm against her back. Every correction sent awareness skittering across her nerves. "You're tense," he murmured, his breath stirring her hair. "You're standing very close. Does it bother you?" "Yes, no, I don't know." Ren tried to focus on the training, but his proximity scrambled her thoughts. "This is complicated. Life is complicated." His hands settled on her waist, steadying her position. "Doesn't mean we stop fighting." They practiced for an hour, moving through basic strikes and defensive positions. Ren discovered she had natural instinct for it, reading Fennec's movements and responding before conscious thought caught up. "Good." Approval colored his voice. "Now strike at me. Don't hold back. I'm not going to attack you." "Yes, you are. Because when Tobias comes, he won't give you warning. He'll assume you're weak, vulnerable, easy to eliminate. Prove him wrong." Something in his words ignited fury Ren had been suppressing for weeks. She lunged, wooden blade aimed at his chest. Fennec deflected easily, spinning her around until her back pressed against his front, his arm across her collarbone. Better. Again. They moved through the sequence repeatedly, Fennec pushing her harder each time. Frustration built with every failed attempt, until Ren was breathing hard and sweat dampened her hair. "I can't do this!" She threw the practice dagger down. "I'm not a warrior. I'm barely even a proper shifter. You're wasting time trying to teach someone as weak as—" Fennec caught her shoulders, spinning her to face him. Don't you dare call yourself weak." "Why not? It's what everyone else says. Everyone else is blind." His grip tightened. "You survived attempted murder by someone you trusted. You fled alone into dangerous territory, pregnant and terrified. You adapted to living among rogues despite every fear you'd been taught. You saved Mara from attackers without hesitation. That's not weakness, Ren. That's survival. That's strength." Tears burned her eyes. "You don't understand what it's like. Growing up knowing you're a disappointment. That your wolf might never manifest. That you're barely worth—" He kissed her. The contact was fierce, desperate, swallowing her words. Ren froze for one shocked heartbeat before something inside her ignited. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer as the kiss deepened. He tasted of pine and wood smoke and wild things, and she couldn't get enough. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Fennec rested his forehead against hers. "You carry another man's child," he said roughly. "I know that. I see it every day. But my wolf doesn't care, and neither do I. You're my mate, Ren. That's not something I can ignore or wish away." Before she could respond, shouts erupted from the settlement. Fennec's head snapped up, his entire body going taut. The moment between them shattered as he grabbed her hand and ran. Chaos greeted them in the clearing. Armed men poured from the forest, wearing Iron Peak colors and bearing steel instead of practice weapons. This wasn't bandits. This was calculated attack. "Get the children inside!" Fennec's alpha command rang out. Rogues scrambled to obey, herding the young toward reinforced cabins. Ren spotted Willem, the Delta who'd been with Tobias during that terrible conversation. He grinned when their eyes met, pointing directly at her. Then Tobias emerged from the tree line, flanked by a dozen warriors. "There you are, darling." His voice carried across the clearing, cold and mocking. "You've led us on quite the chase." Fennec moved in front of Ren, shielding her with his body. "You're not welcome here. I'm not here for permission." Tobias's gaze found Ren over Fennec's shoulder. "My runaway bride and I have unfinished business." "She's not your anything," Fennec growled. "She's carrying my child. That gives me every right." Ren's hands clenched. Near the armory, she saw bows hanging on their rack. Before conscious thought caught up, she was moving, grabbed the nearest bow, knocked an arrow with hands that somehow remembered Rowan's training from years ago. Drew, released. The arrow took Tobias in the shoulder, spinning him around with a howl of pain and rage. His men surged forward. Fennec shifted partially, his form blurring between human and wolf as he met them with devastating violence. Through the chaos, Tobias found her again. Blood soaked his shoulder where the arrow had struck, but fury drove him forward. He crossed the clearing in great leaping strides, faster than human, closing the distance before Ren could knock another arrow. "You bitch!" His hand closed around her throat, slamming her against a tree. "Do you have any idea what you've cost me?" Ren clawed at his grip, unable to breathe. Black spots danced across her vision. "Gregor executed your father yesterday as punishment for your betrayal. Did you know that?" Tobias's smile was terrible. "Your running away killed him." The words hit harder than any physical blow. "Her father. Dead. Because of her. And you." Tobias's other hand pressed against her stomach. "You'll deliver this child. And through him, I'll seize everything I was denied. But understand this, Ren. When the time comes, neither you nor Rowan will stand in my way. I'll tear down every bond that defies me." Rage cut through Ren's shock. Her hand found the blade Oryx had given her weeks ago, the one she'd kept strapped to her thigh. She drove it upward with all her strength, feeling it bite deep into Tobias's side. He released her with a scream, stumbling backward. Blood welled around the hilt, still protruding from his ribs. Fennec was there then, catching Tobias by the throat and throwing him to the ground with bone-shattering force. For a moment, Ren thought he'd kill him, should kill him, but Tobias's men were rallying, and Fennec had to let him go to defend against 3 attackers at once. Tobias crawled toward the trees, one hand pressed against his bleeding side, the other holding Ren's embedded dagger. His eyes promised murder when they met hers. "This isn't over," he gasped. "I'll see you both dead." Then he was gone, vanishing into the forest with his remaining warriors dragging him to safety. The settlement fell silent, except for harsh breathing and the crackle of flames where a cabin had caught fire during the fight. 3 rogues lay dead. 12 more bled from various wounds. Ren slid down the tree trunk, her body shaking uncontrollably. Her father was dead. Tobias had escaped. Everything was falling apart. Fennec knelt beside her, gathering her against his chest despite the blood on his hands and clothes. "Breathe. Just breathe," he said. She couldn't finish, couldn't voice the terrible words. "I know. But we don't know if he was telling the truth. Tobias lies as easily as breathing." Ren wanted to believe him. Desperately wanted to cling to that hope, but the certainty in Tobias's voice had been real, his satisfaction at delivering the blow unmistakable. Around them, the settlement began picking up pieces. Mara moved among the wounded. Oryx directed cleanup efforts. Life continued even when it felt like it should stop. Fennec helped Ren to her feet, his arms supporting her waist. "Come. You need rest. I need my father." Her voice broke on the words. "I need this to not be happening. I know." He pressed a kiss to her temple, gentle despite everything. "But right now, you need to survive. For yourself, for the child, for all of us who need you." Ren let him lead her away from the destruction, toward the dubious safety of Mara's cabin. Behind them, smoke rose into the darkening sky, carrying with it the last remnants of the peace they'd briefly found. And somewhere in the distance, Tobias fled toward Iron Peak, with her blade still buried in his side, already planning his next move. Chapter 5. The Price of Truth. Dawn broke gray and cold over the settlement. Ren stood at the edge of the clearing where 3 fresh graves marked the earth, their mounds still dark with disturbed soil. 3 rogues who'd died defending a home built from rejection. 3 lives lost because she'd brought danger to their doorstep. Behind her, the sounds of reconstruction filled the morning. Hammers striking wood, voices calling measurements, life continuing despite death, because survival demanded it. But the weight in Wren's chest made each breath feel stolen. Fennec found her there, his presence announcing itself before he spoke. The mate bond between them had grown stronger since their kiss, an invisible thread connecting them even across distance. "You're not responsible," he said quietly. 3 people are dead because Tobias tracked me here. 3 people died fighting for what we've built. They knew the risks when they chose this life. His hand settled on her shoulder, warm and grounding. "Don't dishonor their sacrifice by claiming it." Wren turned to face him. Exhaustion lined his features. Shadows beneath amber eyes that spoke of sleepless hours, spent organizing defenses and tending wounded. Alpha responsibility weighed heavily, she realized. He carried every loss, every injury, as personal failure. "How many more will die before this ends? As many as it takes to stop men like Gregor and Tobias from destroying lives unchallenged." Fennec's jaw tightened. "I won't apologize for that, Wren. Some battles are worth the cost." Mara appeared from the healing cabin, her expression grim. "Fennec, I need to speak with you both. Privately." They followed her inside, where the scent of healing herbs couldn't quite mask the underlying copper tang of blood from treating wounded. Mara gestured them toward the small table, her movements uncharacteristically hesitant. "I need to explain something about mate bonds," she began. "Specifically, bonds complicated by existing pregnancies." Wren's stomach clenched. "What about them?" "Traditionally, a mate bond cannot be completed through the claiming ritual until there are no barriers between souls. Some interpret that as meaning." Mara paused, choosing words carefully. "Some believe the pregnancy must be resolved first, either through birth or loss." "You mean I'd have to lose the baby before we could complete the bond?" Horror flooded through Wren. "That's barbaric. It's interpretation of ancient law, written by males who feared complications." Mara's tone carried disgust. "I don't believe it. I think a true mate bond transcends such limitations. But others may challenge it, claim the bond is invalid." Fennec's hand found Wren's, lacing their fingers together. "Then let them challenge. This bond is real regardless of what tradition says." Before Mara could respond, commotion erupted outside. Oryx burst through the door, face flushed from running, eyes bright with urgent news. "Fennec, we have information." He paused, gaze finding Wren. "About your father." Her heart stopped. "What about him?" "He's alive." Tobias lied. "Rowan is imprisoned in Iron Peak's dungeons, badly injured but breathing. They're using him as bait to draw you back." Relief and terror warred in Wren's chest. "Alive. Her father was alive, but trapped, tortured, held hostage because of her." "How do you know this?" Fennec demanded. "Scouts intercepted an Iron Peak patrol, overheard them discussing guard rotations for the dungeon level." Oryx's expression hardened. "Gregor wants Wren to know Rowan's alive, wants her desperate enough to return." "It's a trap," Mara said immediately. "Of course it's a trap." Wren stood, decision crystallizing with sudden clarity. "Which is why I'm going to walk right into it." "Absolutely not." Fennec rose as well, alpha command edging his voice. "Listen to me." Wren faced him squarely, refusing to be cowed. "If I turn myself in, Tobias gets what he wants. All attention focuses on me, the traitorous Beta's daughter returning to face justice. While they're occupied with that spectacle, you and your people can infiltrate through the eastern drainage, reach the dungeons, extract my father. You're asking me to use you as bait. I'm telling you this is the only way to save him." She stepped closer, holding Fennec's gaze. "You said some battles are worth the cost. This is mine. You could die. Tobias wants you dead. Not immediately. He needs me alive to deliver the baby, remember? I have months before I'm truly in danger." The words tasted bitter, but logic supported them. "I'll be imprisoned, yes. Probably treated terribly, but he won't kill me yet. That gives you time." Fennec's control cracked. "No, I won't risk you. I can't. You don't have a choice." Wren felt something shift inside her. Some core of strength she hadn't known existed. I'm not asking permission, Fennec. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. Try to stop me, and I'll just find another way. His eyes flashed gold, wolf rising to the surface. I am your alpha. You're my mate, not my master. She held her ground, even as his power pressed against her senses. Use command on me if you want. Force me to obey. But you'll destroy whatever trust we've built, and you know it. The tension stretched between them, thick enough to choke. Finally, Fennec turned away, hands fisting at his sides. When he spoke, his voice was rough with suppressed emotion. If I agree to this insanity, you follow my conditions. Oryx accompanies you, staying hidden at distance. You surrender at the gates publicly, making it impossible for them to quietly dispose of you. And you give me 3 days to plan the extraction properly. 2 days. My father doesn't have time for 3. 2.5. Ren nodded. Agreed. The preparation took 1 day. Oryx gathered supplies while Mara treated Ren's lingering injuries. Fennec barely spoke. His jaw tight with disapproval he couldn't voice without admitting he couldn't control her. The night before she left, he found her standing outside her cabin, watching stars emerge. I hate this, he said without preamble. I know. If anything happens to you, it won't. She turned to face him, reaching up to cup his scarred cheek. I'm stronger than everyone thinks, than even I thought. You showed me that. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. Come back to me. Whatever it takes. Survive and come back. I will. She pressed her lips to his, pouring promise into the kiss. I have too much to live for now. The journey to Iron Peak took 2 days of hard riding. Oryx maintained careful distance, Shadow tracking her progress. Ren used the solitude to think, to prepare herself mentally for what awaited. On the second day, something incredible happened. A flutter in her belly, so light she almost missed it. Then again, stronger. The baby moving for the first time. Ren stopped her horse, hands pressed against her stomach. This child, conceived in deception, had become real in that moment. Not Tobias's tool. Not a complication. A person, growing inside her, deserving protection and love. I won't let him hurt you, she whispered. Whatever happens, you're mine. Only mine. Iron Peak Fortress rose from the landscape like a gray tooth, familiar and foreign simultaneously. Ren had grown up within those walls. Now they represented a prison she was voluntarily entering. She dismounted at the gates as Fennec had instructed, calling out to the guards in clear voice that carried, I am Ren Thornley, daughter of Beta Rowan. I've come to face Alpha Gregor's judgment. The gates opened. Hands grabbed her roughly, confiscating her weapons. Someone struck her across the face, splitting her lip. The metallic taste of blood filled her mouth. Traitor! One guard spat. They dragged her through familiar corridors to the dungeons. The cell they threw her into was dark, damp, smelling of mold and old fear. The door clanged shut with terrible finality. Hours passed in darkness. Ren dozed fitfully, dreaming of forests and amber eyes. Footsteps woke her. Torchlight spilled through the bars as Tobias appeared, bandaged and limping from the wound she'd given him. His smile was vicious. There's my runaway bride. Ren stood, refusing to cower. Where's my father? Alive, for now. Tobias studied her, gaze lingering on her stomach. You're showing more now. Good. Makes the story more believable. What story? The one where you'll be tried publicly tomorrow for treason, for conspiring with rogues against your own pack. The evidence is quite damning. You'll be imprisoned until you deliver my child, then executed for your crimes. His smile widened. Your rogue king lover will come for you, of course. 50 warriors will be waiting when he does. He's smarter than you think. Is he? We'll see. Tobias leaned close to the bars. Your father sends his regards, by the way. He's been very communicative under interrogation. Stubborn old man. Refuses to tell us anything useful. Ren's hands clenched. If you've hurt him, you'll what? You're locked in a cell, pregnant alone. You have no power here. After he left, darkness pressed in from all sides. Ren sat against the cold stone wall, fighting despair. What had she been thinking? that she could outsmart an alpha and his conspirators, that Fennec could mount a rescue against such odds. The sound of approaching footsteps made her tense. A different guard this time, older, with a face marked by decades of service. He glanced around furtively before sliding a food tray through the bars. "Eat quickly," he muttered. Wren reached for the bread, and her fingers brushed something underneath. Cloth, rough and small, wrapped around something. She palmed it, nodding, understanding. After the guard left, she unwrapped the fabric in darkness. Charcoal marks formed words on the inside, barely legible but unmistakable. "Daughter. This guard served with me 20 years. He risked much to deliver this. I always knew you were special. Your wolf never manifested because it waited for something greater. Someone who would see you as you truly are. I was wrong to push the match with Tobias. Gregor threatened to banish our entire family if I refused. I thought I could protect you from within the system. Forgive this foolish father. Your mate will come. Trust him. Be strong. You are more than they ever believed." Tears streamed down Wren's face as she clutched the cloth to her chest. Her father knew about Fennec, approved, believed in her strength. For the first time since entering the cell, Wren felt something beyond fear. Resolution settled in her bones, cold and absolute. Tobias and Gregor thought they'd won by caging her. They'd forgotten that caged animals become desperate, and desperate creatures were most dangerous. She closed her eyes, reaching for that weak wolf presence inside her. For the first time, she felt it respond not with uncertainty, but with patient waiting. Not yet, it seemed to say. But soon. Wren settled against the wall, one hand on her stomach where the baby rested, the other clutching her father's message. Tomorrow would bring trial and spectacle, but tomorrow would also bring Fennec and his rogues. And when the moon rose, everything would change. Chapter 6. Blood and Moonlight. Dawn arrived gray and bitter. Guards dragged Wren from her cell before first light, their hands rough as they hauled her up stone stairs toward the fortress courtyard. Every member of Iron Peak Pack had been summoned, crowding the open space with bodies and hostile stares. A platform stood at the center, wooden and crude, built for spectacle rather than comfort. They shoved Wren onto it, forcing her to her knees. The crowd murmured, a living thing of judgment and anticipation. Alpha Gregor emerged from the keep, flanked by warriors. At 52, he remained powerfully built, gray threading his dark hair, but strength still evident in every movement. His eyes found Wren with cold satisfaction. "Iron Peak Pack," his voice carried across the courtyard. "We gather to witness justice. This female, daughter of our beta, stands accused of treason. She conspired with rogues. She fled her rightful mate. She brought shame upon her bloodline." Wren searched the crowd desperately. Where was Fennec? Where were the rogues who were supposed to infiltrate during this distraction? Then she saw them. Her heart plummeted. Near the eastern wall, guards dragged figures in silver chains. Fennec walked among them, head high despite the metal burning his wrists. Oryx struggled beside him. 20 rogues total, all captured, all bound in chains that sizzled against shifter flesh. It was a trap. They'd known. Somehow, Tobias had anticipated everything. Tobias himself appeared, limping slightly from his wound but triumphant. His smile when their eyes met promised slow death. "Your rogue king thought to rescue you," Gregor announced. "Instead, he delivered himself and his rabble directly into our hands. They will die alongside you at sunset. A fitting end to those who defy pack law." The crowd roared approval. Wren's vision swam. She'd led them into this. Her plan. Her certainty that she could outwit them. Now Fennec would die because of her. "But first," Gregor continued, "let the accused speak. Tell us, Wren Thornley. Do you deny consorting with rogues?" Wren raised her head, meeting his gaze. "I deny nothing. I sought shelter with those you cast out. I found more honor among the rejected than I ever found in these walls." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Tobias's expression darkened with rage. "And I'll tell you something else." Wren's voice strengthened. "This alpha you serve, this supposed leader, is a murderer and conspirator. 8 years ago, he helped poison a child. the son of an alpha who served the king's court. A 7-year-old boy named Corvin. Silence fell heavy and complete. Fennec's voice rang out from where he stood chained. I was accused of that murder. Exiled without trial. But I wasn't the killer. Alpha Gregor paid another guard, a man named Theron, to poison the boy. They wanted to destabilize alliances, to weaken both the child's family and mine. Lies! Gregor snarled. Desperate words from desperate rogues. Then explain the letters, Fennec continued. The payment records. The testimony of servants who witnessed your meetings with Theron. Evidence my sister has been collecting for 8 years through contacts in multiple packs. What evidence? You have nothing, don't I? Fennec's smile was dangerous. My sister sent detailed documentation to the Alpha King weeks ago. She believed he deserved truth about his grandson's murder. Gregor's expression flickered, uncertainty crossing his features for the first time. You're bluffing. The king would never believe. Horns sounded from the gates. Not attack horns, the formal announcement reserved for royalty. The Alpha King entered Iron Peak's courtyard, flanked by 30 royal guards in ceremonial armor. He was ancient by shifter standards, perhaps 70, but power radiated from him still. His eyes, once amber like Fennec's, had faded to pale gold, but they missed nothing as they swept the scene. I received an interesting letter a few days ago. His voice carried absolute authority. Anonymous, but detailed. It spoke of conspiracies, murders, and injustice stretching back nearly a decade. His gaze found Fennec. The Rogue King, they called you. How dramatic. Tell me, Fennec Wolfsbane, do you stand by these accusations? I do, Your Majesty. Every word. And you claim to have proof? Before Fennec could answer, a figure emerged from the crowd. Mara, her red hair bright in the morning light, carried a leather folder. She knelt before the Alpha King. I am Mara Wolfsbane, Your Majesty. Fennec's sister. For 8 years, I've maintained contacts in multiple packs. People who sympathized with our cause but feared joining openly. They helped me collect evidence. She opened the folder. Letters between Gregor and Theron. Payment ledgers showing gold transferred from Iron Peak to Theron's family. Written testimony from a servant who witnessed their planning meetings. Everything you need to see the truth about your grandson's death. The Alpha King took the documents, his expression hardening with each page. When he looked up, ancient fury blazed in his eyes. Is this true, Gregor? Did you murder my grandson? These are forgeries, rogue lies meant to— Enough! The command cracked through the courtyard. I have tolerated much from you, Gregor. Your methods were harsh, but I believed them necessary. But if you killed Corvin, his voice broke. If you murdered that innocent child and let me blame another, Gregor's control shattered. In a blur of motion, he grabbed Ren, hauling her up with inhuman strength. A blade appeared at her throat, pressing hard enough to draw blood. Everyone stays back, or the traitor dies. The crowd erupted in chaos. Royal guards surged forward. But Gregor dragged Ren toward the wall, toward escape, his grip bruising. You're mine, he hissed in her ear. My leverage out of this. Tobias will finish what we started once I'm free. Your father will die. Your child will die. Everything you love will— Fennec roared. Not a human sound. Pure wolf fury that shook stones. The silver chains shouldn't have broken. Metal forged specifically to hold shifters, enchanted to prevent transformation. But the mate bond between Fennec and Ren burned hotter than any magic. His wolf surged forward, breaking through human skin, and the chains shattered like glass. He transformed partially, caught between forms. More dangerous than either. Massive jaws, claws extending from human hands. Amber eyes blazing gold. Gregor stumbled back from Ren, his confidence cracking. She fell to her knees, and something inside her finally answered the call she'd been ignoring all her life. Pain. Brilliant and consuming. Her bones shifted, reformed, finding shapes they'd been denied for 22 years. The transformation should have been gentle for a first shift. Instead, it was violent, desperate, driven by need rather than control. When the change completed, Wren stood on 4 legs for the first time. Her wolf was smaller than Fennec's, leaner, but power thrummed through muscles and sinew. Her coat gleamed brown copper in the morning light, and her eyes burned green fire. She understood now why her wolf had waited. This wasn't weakness. It was patience for the right moment, the right threat, the right mate to make her strong enough. Gregor tried to run. Fennec cut him off, forcing him back toward Wren. The alpha shifted as well, a massive gray beast that should have been intimidating. But he was old, and they were fueled by righteous fury. They fought as one. Fennec harried him from the front while Wren circled behind. When Gregor lunged at Fennec's throat, Wren struck. Her jaws closed on his exposed neck, her smaller size allowing her to dart beneath his guard. Bone crunched. Blood flowed hot and metallic. Gregor fell, shifting back to human form in death. His eyes found Wren's, surprise mixing with rage, before life faded completely. Across the courtyard, Tobias tried to flee through the chaos. Oryx, chains broken by Fennec's example, intercepted him. They grappled, and Tobias's blade found flesh, opening a gash across Oryx's ribs. Fennec was there in seconds. No mercy, no hesitation. He tore Tobias's throat out with savage efficiency, ending the male who'd tried to murder his mate, who'd plotted death and deception. When the violence ended, Wren stood over Gregor's body, blood on her muzzle, her wolf triumphant and fierce. She'd killed an alpha. She'd protected her mate. She'd proven every person who'd called her weak absolutely wrong. Then pain lanced through her belly. Different pain. Wrong pain. She shifted back to human form, gasping, and looked down to see blood staining her thighs. The baby. Oh gods. The baby. No, she whispered. Please, not now. Not after everything. Fennec caught her as she collapsed, his arms solid and warm even as darkness crept across her vision. The Alpha King's voice ordering healers seemed distant, muffled. The last thing Wren saw before unconsciousness claimed her was Fennec's amber eyes, fierce with love and terror, promising silently that she'd survive this. That they both would. Chapter 7. The Claiming of Souls. Wren woke to softness. Clean linens beneath her cheek, sunlight filtering through familiar windows. For a moment, she thought herself back in her childhood chamber at Iron Peak. Then memory crashed over her. The battle. Gregor's death. Tobias torn apart. The blood. Her hands flew to her stomach. The baby is safe. Mara's voice came from beside the bed, gentle and reassuring. The healers from the Alpha King's court are the finest in the realm. They stopped the premature labor. You have 6 full months of pregnancy remaining. Relief flooded through Wren so powerfully her eyes burned with tears. How long have I been unconscious? 2 days. Your body needed time to recover from the transformation and the trauma. Mara helped her sit up, propping pillows behind her back. You're in your old chambers. The Alpha King insisted you be given the finest care. The door opened, and Fennec entered. Their eyes met across the room, and the mate bond between them sang with such intensity Wren gasped. He was at her side in 3 strides, gathering her against his chest with desperate gentleness. You terrified me, he murmured into her hair. When you collapsed, when I saw the blood, I thought... He couldn't finish. I'm here. We're both here. Wren's arms tightened around him. What's happened? The Alpha King, the pack, my father. Your father is alive and recovering. The King's healers tended him as well. He's been asking for you. Fennec pulled back enough to meet her eyes. Gregor was killed in battle. The conspiracy has been completely exposed. 8 years of lies, finally brought to light. Over the next hour, they filled her in. How the Alpha King had wept, reading Mara's evidence, grieving anew for his murdered grandson. How he'd ordered Gregor's body burned without honors, his name stricken from pack records. How Tobias's remains had been left for scavengers as punishment for attempted murder of a pregnant female. Iron Peak needs new leadership, Mara said quietly. The king is overseeing the selection of a new alpha. Someone clean of Gregor's corruption. A knock interrupted them. A guard announced that Rowan Thornley requested entrance. Wren's father looked years older than when she'd last seen him. Gray streaked his hair more heavily, and new scars marked his face and arms from torture endured. But his green eyes, so like hers, were clear and bright when they found her. "Daughter." The word broke from him as he crossed to her bed. Wren reached for him and they clung to each other, both weeping. "I'm so sorry. I should never have run. I should have told you everything." "No." Rowan pulled back, cupping her face. "I failed you. I knew you had a mate bond waiting. I saw the signs. Your wolf refusing to manifest, the way you never quite seemed settled. But Gregor threatened to banish our entire family if I refused the match with Tobias. I thought I could protect you from within the system. I was a coward and a fool. You were trying to keep us safe. I was trying to preserve my position." Honesty roughened his voice. "I chose my rank over your happiness. Can you forgive me?" "There's nothing to forgive." Wren glanced at Fennec, who stood at respectful distance, giving them privacy. "I found where I belong. Who I belong with. Maybe everything happened exactly as it needed to." Rowan followed her gaze to Fennec. After a long moment, he stood and approached the Rogue King. They studied each other. These two males who loved the same woman in different ways. "You saved my daughter's life," Rowan said finally. "She saved mine first." Fennec's hand found Wren's, their fingers lacing together. "She's stronger than anyone gave her credit for, including herself." "I see that now." Rowan's expression softened. "The Alpha King has offered me beta position in Iron Peak's new leadership. I declined. 25 years of service is enough. I think it's time I stepped away from pack politics." That afternoon, the Alpha King summoned Fennec to private audience. Wren insisted on accompanying him despite Mara's protests about rest. The old king studied them both with eyes that had seen 7 decades of shifter politics. "Fennec Wolfsbane, for 8 years you carried the burden of false accusation. You were denied justice, denied your place in society, denied everything you'd earned through loyal service. For that, I owe you more than I can ever repay. You were grieving, Your Majesty. Grief makes us vulnerable to manipulation, perhaps. But that doesn't excuse the injustice done to you." The king leaned forward. "I want to restore your family name, give you back your lands, your titles, your place at court. You could serve again as you once did. I'm honored, Your Majesty. Truly." Fennec's hand tightened on Wren's. "But I must decline. I built something in exile. 47 rogues who had nowhere else to go found home with me. I won't abandon them for personal redemption. Then there's a condition to my offer. You must dissolve your rogue pack. They must swear fealty to established packs or disperse." "No." The refusal was immediate and absolute. "I won't scatter people who trusted me, who built community from nothing because packs like Iron Peak decided they were disposable." "Fennec." Wren squeezed his hand, an idea crystallizing. She addressed the king directly. "Your Majesty, what if Shadowfen became an official pack? Not disbanded, but recognized. Fennec as Alpha, governing a territory you grant him. The rogues wouldn't lose their home. They'd simply gain legitimacy." The king sat back, considering. "Unprecedented. A pack born from rogues, given official sanction, is exactly the kind of justice that would honor your grandson's memory," Wren continued. "Corvin died because of corruption in established packs. Creating a new pack that operates with honor and transparency would be fitting tribute." Silence stretched. Then the king nodded slowly. "You argue well, Lady Wren." "Very well. Fennec Wolfsbane, I grant you the forest territory bordering Iron Peak's western edge. You are now Alpha Fennec of the Shadowfen Pack, officially recognized and protected under my authority. Your people are legitimate pack members." Relief crashed over Fennec's features. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I swear to govern with honor." "One more thing." The king's gaze sharpened. "Any shifter claiming unjust banishment may appeal to your pack for sanctuary. You will investigate each case. I cannot have actual criminals escaping justice under false pretense." "Agreed. We'll vet everyone carefully." After they left the audience chamber, Fennec pulled Wren into an empty corridor and kissed her, breathless. "You're brilliant. Did you know that? Absolutely brilliant. I just gave you more responsibility." She laughed against his mouth. "Governing an official pack is harder than leading rogues." "Worth it. Every challenge is worth it with you. His hand splayed across her stomach. With both of you. That evening, Mara found them to discuss something delicate. Mate bonds, claiming rituals, and the complication of Ren's pregnancy. Traditionally, the bond cannot be completed until there are no barriers between your souls, Mara explained. Some interpret that strictly. The pregnancy would need to be resolved first. That's 7 months away. Fennec's jaw tightened. You're saying we can't complete the claiming? I'm saying ancient laws were written by males who feared complications. But I've been researching. Mara produced a worn leather journal. There are rare cases of mate bonds so strong they transcend traditional limitations. In 3 days, there will be a blood moon. The eclipse creates the most powerful night for bonding rituals in generations. If your bond is as strong as I suspect, something extraordinary might happen. What do you mean? Ren asked. The bond might adopt the child. Make it Fennec's in truth, not just intention. Blood, spirit, power, all of it. Mara's eyes gleamed with ancient knowledge. It's happened perhaps a dozen times in recorded history, when 2 souls are so perfectly matched that not even existing circumstances can keep them apart. The blood moon rose 3 nights later, painting the sky crimson. The Shadowfen pack, now officially recognized, had been granted camping rights in a forest clearing while permanent structures were built. They gathered there to witness their alpha's claiming ritual. Ren stood at the center of a stone circle, wearing a simple white dress that Mara had somehow procured. Around her, pack members held torches that cast dancing shadows. Fennec approached from the forest's edge, bare-chested and beautiful in the red moonlight. His amber eyes found hers with such intensity she forgot to breathe. I choose you, Ren Thornley. His voice carried across the clearing. Not because of destiny or fate, but because you showed me that strength comes in forms I'd never imagined. You're my mate by choice. My equal. My Luna. Tears tracked down Ren's cheeks as she replied. I choose you, Fennec Wolfsbane. You showed me I wasn't weak or broken, just waiting for someone brave enough to see me clearly. You're my mate, my alpha, my home. They came together in the center of the circle. Fennec's teeth found the junction of her neck and shoulder, marking her with a bite that would scar silver. The pain was brief, followed by pleasure that made her gasp. Then Ren marked him in return, her weaker bite still strong enough to break skin. When their blood mingled, light exploded around them. Golden and pure, so bright pack members shielded their eyes. Ren felt the bond lock into place, heard Fennec's thoughts as clearly as her own, and then something shifted in her womb. The baby moved, stronger than before. Through their bond, Fennec felt it too. His eyes widened in wonder as the child's weak shifter energy suddenly blazed strong and healthy. It's working, Mara breathed from the circle's edge. The bond is adopting the child. Magic ancient as the moon itself wove between them, rewriting blood and destiny. When the light finally faded, Ren knew with absolute certainty that the baby growing inside her was Fennec's daughter in every way that mattered. Mine, Fennec whispered, his hand over her stomach where their daughter rested. Both of you. Finally mine. That night, in a cabin prepared for them, they consummated their bond. Ren had been with Tobias before, but this was different. This was connection that went beyond physical. Every touch resonated through the mate bond, pleasure doubling and reflecting between them until neither could tell where one ended and the other began. Afterward, as they lay tangled together, Fennec traced the silver scar at her neck. 7 months until she's born. Have you thought about names? Liana, Ren said immediately. It means grace and strength. Perfect. He kissed her temple, just like her mother. Outside, the blood moon began to set, and a new era dawned for the pack born from rejection. Chapter 8. Queen of the Forsaken. 7 months had passed since the blood moon claiming, and the forest had transformed into something remarkable. Where temporary shelters once stood, permanent structures now rose. Cabins of solid timber with stone foundations climbed hillsides and nestled between ancient oaks. A modest fortress guarded the eastern approach, its walls not meant to intimidate but to protect. Rope bridges connected platforms built high in the trees, creating pathways through the canopy where children played and scouts kept watch. The Shadowfen pack had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What began as 47 outcasts had swelled to 89 members in just 7 months. The news of a rogue pack receiving official recognition from the Alpha King himself had spread through the realm like wildfire. Shifters who'd been unjustly banished, living in shadows and fear, finally had hope of legitimate sanctuary. They came from all directions, carrying stories of corruption, abuse, and injustice. Ren and Oryx investigated each case personally. Some were turned away when their stories didn't hold under scrutiny. Most, however, had suffered genuine wrongs. A young Omega fleeing forced mate bonds. An elderly Delta banished for challenging his Alpha's cruelty. A widow with 3 children, marked as rogue when her mate died protecting pack lands, and no one would take responsibility for his family. All found home in Shadowfen. Ren sat in what they'd begun calling the Court of the Moon, a circular stone platform built in a clearing where morning sunlight filtered through leaves. The young Omega she'd been interviewing wept quietly, recounting abuse that made Ren's hands clench with fury. "You have sanctuary here," Ren said gently, though steel edged her voice. "Oryx will send a messenger to your former pack. Your Alpha will answer to the Alpha King for violating laws against forced bonds, or he'll face consequences." The Omega's tears shifted to relief. "Thank you, my lady. Thank you." After she left, Ren allowed herself a moment of exhaustion. 7 months pregnant had been challenging. Now, with baby Lyanna just 3 weeks old, she was navigating the chaos of new motherhood while managing growing pack responsibilities. The title they'd given her, Queen of the Forsaken, felt simultaneously too grand and exactly right. Lyanna's cry drifted from the nearby dwelling. Ren's breasts tightened with the instinct to nurse, but Mara appeared in the doorway, red hair bright in afternoon sun, holding the infant with practiced ease. "She's hungry again. This one eats more than her father did as a pup." Mara's smile was warm as she handed the baby over. Ren cradled her daughter, marveling as she did a dozen times daily at the miracle of her. Lyanna had Fennec's amber eyes and dark hair, but Ren's small nose and the curve of her mouth. The blood moon ritual had made her Fennec's in every measurable way. No trace of Tobias remained, as if the mate bond had reached back through conception itself and rewritten reality. "You're getting better at judgment calls," Mara observed, as Lyanna latched and began nursing contentedly. "Last month you would have agonized for hours before offering sanctuary. Last month I was still terrified of making wrong decisions." Ren adjusted her position, getting comfortable. "Now I'm just terrified most of the time, but I make decisions anyway." Mara laughed, settling onto the bench beside her. "That's called confidence, dear. You're becoming the Luna this pack needs." Through the mate bond, Ren felt Fennec approaching before she heard his footsteps. He emerged from the tree line with Oryx, both covered in sawdust from working on the new communal hall. His eyes found her immediately, softening as he took in the sight of his mate nursing their daughter. "How many today?" he asked, meaning petitions for sanctuary. 3. 2 accepted, 1 sent away with provisions and directions to a pack that might suit better. "She's becoming ruthlessly efficient," Mara added. "Soon she won't need my counsel at all. I'll always need you." Ren reached out to squeeze the healer's hand. Mara had become mentor, friend, and the sister she'd never had. "All of you." Rowan appeared then, her father moving slower these days, but with peace in his expression that had been absent for years. He declined every offer of official position, preferring to serve as grandfather and advisor. Watching him play with Lyanna, telling stories of Ren's childhood to the infant who couldn't possibly understand, filled something in Ren's heart she hadn't known was empty. "There's someone here from the Alpha King," Rowan said, his tone shifting to concern. "Messenger with urgent news." Fennec's expression darkened. He took Lyanna carefully, cradling her against his broad chest, while Ren adjusted her dress and stood. Together, they walked to where a young courier in royal colors waited. The message was brief and troubling. 3 regional alphas had formed an alliance. The territories to the northeast, east, and southeast. They were disturbed by Shadowfen's rapid growth, fearful that a pack of former rogues might grow more powerful than established bloodlines. Rumors spoke of plans to attack during winter when resources would be scarce, claiming self-defense against a perceived threat. "The Alpha King wishes you to know he stands by his recognition of your pack," the messenger concluded. "But he cannot prevent war between alphas if they claim legitimate concerns. He advises you to strengthen your defenses." After the messenger departed, silence hung heavy. "Let them come," Oryx growled. "We've faced worse." "Have we?" Fennec's jaw was tight. 3 packs, well established, with warriors who've trained since birth. We have people still learning to fight, still recovering from trauma. We have people who've survived things those pampered pack warriors couldn't imagine, Ren countered. We have something worth defending. That night, after Lyanna was settled in her cradle and the settlement had quieted, Fennec found Ren standing at the edge of the clearing. The moon hung full and bright above them, painting everything in silver. "Do you regret it?" His arms came around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. "Leaving your privileged life? You could have married some wealthy pack heir, lived in comfort and safety. Instead, you're here preparing for war." Ren turned in his embrace to face him. "You really have to ask? I need to hear it sometimes. That I didn't trap you in a life you never wanted." She cupped his face, tracing the scar that marked him from eyebrow to cheek. "Look around, Fennec. Really look." Together, they surveyed their territory. In the training grounds, former rogues practiced combat forms, laughing as mistakes were made but never giving up. Near the communal kitchen, children played freely without fear, including 3 orphans the pack had adopted as their own. The young Omega she'd granted sanctuary that morning sat with other females, already beginning to heal from her trauma. Rowan walked with Mara, deep in conversation about expanding the healing ward. "I grew up in a golden cage, surrounded by lies," Ren said quietly. "Beautiful walls, yes, but they were still walls. My value was measured in who I could marry, what political advantage my body could provide. Here," she gestured broadly, "here, my value is measured in how I help others find safety, how I use my mind and my strength to build something real. You don't miss the comfort? I miss not worrying about winter provisions or potential attacks, but I don't miss the person I was becoming. Small, obedient, slowly dying inside without even realizing it." She pulled him down for a kiss. "You showed me I was strong. This pack showed me I was valuable. Our daughter will grow up knowing she can be whatever she chooses, not what breeding demands." Fennec's arms tightened around her. "We built something impossible, didn't we? A pack that shouldn't exist, led by an alpha who was exiled, and a Luna who was supposed to die. We built something necessary," Ren corrected, "for everyone who comes after us. My mate," his forehead pressed against hers, "my Luna, my home, and yours." She kissed him again, deeper this time. "Always yours." Later, when the moon had climbed higher and Lyanna slept peacefully, watched over by Mara, Fennec and Ren shifted. The transformation came easily now to Ren, her wolf strong and confident. She was still smaller than Fennec's massive black form, but her brown copper coat gleamed with health, and power thrummed through every muscle. They ran through their territory together, leaping streams and weaving between trees. The forest welcomed them, familiar now, theirs by right and recognition. When they reached the highest point in their land, they stopped. Fennec threw his head back and howled. Not threat, not warning. Pure joy in existence, in pack, in mate and daughter, and the life they'd built from rejection. Ren joined him, her voice higher, but no less powerful. Their song echoed through the forest, and from all directions, the pack answered. 89 voices rising together in harmony. The sound of belonging, of home, of wolves who'd been cast aside finding purpose in each other. When they returned to their dwelling, shifting back to human form, Lyanna was awake and fussing. Fennec lifted her gently, and she quieted immediately at her father's touch. "Tell her the story," Ren requested, settling beside them. Fennec's voice dropped to storytelling cadence. Once upon a time, there was a rogue king who'd lost everything and a runaway bride who believed she was weak. They found each other in a storm, and together they discovered that the rejected and broken could build something stronger than any pack born from tradition. They called themselves Shadowfen, and they became legend. What kind of legend? Ren prompted, though she'd heard this version a dozen times. The kind that changes the world. Because when outcasts unite under wise leaders who remember what it means to suffer, they create justice where there was only cruelty. They build families where there were only political alliances, and they prove that love freely chosen is stronger than any destiny forced by blood. Lyanna gurgled, reaching up to grab her father's finger. Ren leaned against Fennec's shoulder, watching their daughter, feeling through the mate bond his absolute contentment. We were abandoned by our packs, Fennec continued softly. But together, we built something that no kingdom can destroy. A family forged not in blood of birth, but in choice, sacrifice, and love that will outlast us all. And little one, this is just the beginning of our story. Outside, the pack settled into sleep. Guards walked their rotations. The settlement breathed with life and purpose. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Threats loomed on the horizon. But tonight, the Queen of the Forsaken and her rogue king held their daughter and knew, with absolute certainty, that they had found exactly where they belonged. And in finding themselves, they had shown 87 other lost souls that belonging wasn't something granted by birth or bloodline. It was something built, defended, and chosen daily by those brave enough to believe they deserved better than the world had offered them. The legend of Shadowfen had only just begun.